So good morning or good evening, wherever you are. So we'll continue on with parting from the four attachments or the four graspings. And yesterday we started on the third one, which our author spelled out as being grasping at your own welfare. Okay, so thinking our own welfare in this life and also in terms of attaining nirvana, that it is more important than anything else. Okay, and the antidote was reflection on bodhicitta. So yesterday we started that a little bit. We talked about equanimity and leveling the playing field. And then I went briefly through the 7 points of cause and effect. And then today we'll continue from that. And I'll talk maybe at the beginning, because one of the questions involves what is compassion. And that's a really critical thing to understand as we go forward, to really see where we're trying to go. And in doing that, first I want to recommend 2 books that will help you with this. So the first one is called An Open-Hearted Life. If you're in the US, look for An Open-Hearted Life. If you're in Europe, look for Living with an Open Heart. It's the same book, but Living with an Open Heart was published in UK, and An Open-Hearted Life was published in the US, and so the price of the book is different depending on where you live. Okay, and that is written by Russell Colts and me. Russell is a clinical therapist at Eastern Washington University. And so the book is not a particularly Buddhist book, but it has a lot of Buddhism in it, in the sense that we can talk about a lot of things from a Buddhist viewpoint without using Buddhist words or adhering to any kind of theology. And Russell brings in a lot of the psychological and scientific perspective on that. And then the second book is called In Praise of Great Compassion, and it's by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and it will be published in August of this year, so you're going to have to wait for it. But it really goes into a lot of depth about developing bodhicitta and love and compassion and the different ways of cultivating these in the various Buddhist traditions. So these 2 books I really recommend. Okay. Also, there's a third book called Transforming Adversity into Joy and Courage, and it's by Geshe Jumpa Tekchok. And chapters 10 and 11 in that book are really, really good for talking about these 2 ways to generate bodhicitta. And the explanation in chapter 11 about the taking and giving meditation is the most thorough one that I've read. It's really quite excellent. So 3 books. Yeah. But let's begin today with our recitations and some meditation. And, again, remember to visualize all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the space in front, their bodies made of light, and you're surrounded by all sentient beings, and include in your visualization, especially since we talked about equanimity yesterday, include all the friends, all the strangers, and all the enemies. Yeah, in your visualization. And I find it very effective to put the enemies right in front of me, between me and the Buddha. So in order to see the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, I have to look at the people that I have animosity towards, and I have to resolve that situation somehow. So I find it really, that's helpful to do that. And also because it's helpful to think of those people taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, because that, we're leading them in doing that when we're doing the recitations. So based on what we talked about yesterday, recall that the categories of dear one, enemy, and stranger are things created by our own mind. We created those categories. And remember too that how we put people in those categories, the criteria for which category we put them in, depends completely on how they relate to us. As if their value as a human being was only in terms of how they treat us. And so think about how false that is, how narrow-minded it is. And thus there's no friend, enemy, and stranger from their own side. We really make up not only the categories, but the criteria for them, and we're the ones who judge people like that. They are not objectively good and bad people, friend, enemy, and stranger. And then reflect that everybody equally wants happiness and not suffering. And the happiness of friends, enemies, and strangers, they're not wanting suffering. And ours, wanting happiness and not suffering. All of those are totally equal. And so suffering is to be eliminated, no matter whose it is. Happiness is to be cultivated, no matter whose it is. And so with a wish to eliminate suffering and bring happiness, let's have a strong aspiration to develop our own capabilities so that we can bring that about. And one way to do that, a long-term way to do that, is to follow the path to full awakening and gain the wisdom, compassion, skillful means of a fully awakened one, which can be of great benefit to all living beings. So aspire for that. So one question arose, that in all this talk that we're having of friend, enemy, and stranger, and relinquishing attachment and animosity and everything, how do we have close relationships with people? Yeah. So what does a close relationship look like if you don't want to get attached to somebody? And so this is something that we have to figure out on our own by trial and error and watching our own mind. But I can offer some tips on this. And one is that to realize that the way we have been conditioned by society and our family is to think that intimate relationships, involve, telling each other our secrets, sharing our feelings, sharing our thoughts, being very close to each other, talking a lot, really being part of each other's lives, and having a degree of emotional attachment, as well as expectations from those people that we're close to. Yeah, because we want a best friend. Yeah, because we're always there, and it's kind of an effort. When I was talking about the 6 defects of samsara, that we're born alone and die alone and experience things alone, it's kind of like an effort to put that off, that no, I'm not alone. There's somebody that is glued to me and I'm glued to them, or at least a few people, and that will stave off that fear of being isolated or alone. And so one image the society teaches us of that kind of friendship is a friendship. Another image of an intimate relationship also involves sex. Okay? And so we have those two kind of relationships that society teaches us about being close to other living beings. Yeah, basically. As adults with, parent and child, you're close, but there's also the awareness that the child is going to grow up and become more independent, hopefully. Not always sure, but hopefully. So, we get kind of confused. Well, if you take away the emotional stickiness, if you take away the expectation that that person is always going to support me, whatever I go through emotionally, whatever situation that I face, if you take away being able to touch each other, whether in a friendship, just give each other a hug, or, in a romantic relationship where sex is involved. If we take all that away, then, how do you really have a close friend? Yeah. And this is a question that comes up very, very often. So I think we have to, first of all, check what kind of friendship we want. Okay? If you're a layperson, all those varieties are open to you. If you're a monastic, you have a precept of celibacy, so the one entailing sex isn't open, and also the one of having one best friend that you're always with and always around. That one is very much discouraged in the monastic community because it leads to forming little cliques, it leads to attachment, and so on. Okay? So depending whether you're lay or monastic, you have different kinds of relationships open to you. Yeah. The monastic kind of one it's a new kind of friendship that society doesn't talk about very much. And it's one where you are transparent and you share with people, but you don't have one best friend that you always share with. You have a community that you share with, that you try and be transparent with. There may be certain people in the community that you go to when you need help, when you need somebody to listen to you or whatever. The level of trust is a little bit greater there. That's fine, but there aren't the expectations that you're going to be in a spiritual community and you're going to be best friends and always do everything together. Because you live in a community and there's a lot of people there. And a community is a community. It's not a group of couples. Yeah? So, we try and really, we can be very, very close, but without a lot of attachment and expectations. Yeah? And I know for myself, there's many people that I've become friends with over the years that now live in other countries or other places, Dharma friends. And those Dharma friends, we don't stay in touch a lot because we're all quite busy in our lives. But I know that we can pick up a conversation where we left it off. And if ever I needed support, I could call on them and the support would be there. Okay? But it isn't like we talk every day, and sometimes, a year will go by or whatever. But it's okay because we're developing, I think as a monastic, one of the big things I know personally I had to develop was the ability to manage my own emotions without instantly running to a friend for support, because that's what I did before. Yeah, I ran to somebody else for that kind of emotional support. And of course, then you get attached with that person and you have expectations, and then things don't always work out the way you expected, and problems come, and I think everybody's familiar with what happens then. Okay? So, in the monastic community, we're trying to do it a little bit differently. Okay? But for lay people, it's really a thing of figuring out what kind of relationship you want. Do you want this kind, or do you want one where there's more expectations? Yeah. And, more of a feeling that you're supporting each other and you're there for each other and you're not going to separate, even though separation will come. Because in samsara, whatever comes together is going to separate. Yeah. So just because whatever comes together is going to separate doesn't mean that we wall ourselves off from, close relationships with people. We can have close relationships, but we try to do them without that clinginess and neediness and so on. Okay? But, like I said at the beginning, it's a trial and error things when you actually start to do it, and you have to watch your mind. And if you're withdrawing too much, or being too sticky, or having too many expectations. So this is the kind of thing that you have to learn simply through your own experience. Mm-hmm. Actually, there's many things in Dharma that we have to learn through our own experience. And we can ask somebody, and they can give us a long, detailed answer. But that's not really, sometimes that can really help clarify misconceptions in our mind. I mean, that's why we listen to teachings, isn't it? To get rid of the misconceptions in our mind. But when it comes to actually doing something, we're the one who has to try this and try that and see what's going on in our mind and what are our habit patterns and what kind of thoughts coincide with virtue, what thoughts coincide with non-virtue, what are my aims in life, what kind of life do I want to live, and so on. And so these are all personal things that we have to figure out ourselves. Nobody else can tell us what they are, how to do them. Yeah. So sometimes people write me and ask me for advice, and I write back and I say, think about it, because sometimes I write back and I say, I think you already know the answer, because I can tell by the way the question is written. People know the answer. They just want somebody from the outside to say yes. Yeah. But I want them to learn to have confidence in their own views. So sometimes I write back and I say, I think you know the answer. Yeah. And then that way they develop confidence, and they also, can learn from their mistakes. And then other times, it may not be a thing where people already know the answer. But if they sat down and thought about it, they could figure it out. I have that faith in them, in their own wisdom, that they could figure it out if they thought about it. And it may be something that requires trial and error. Yeah. But like I said, people need to do that for themselves. I can't do that for them. And so sometimes I write and I say, think about that yourself. Yeah? Because I think it's good that we learn to think through some things on our own, and then also to be able to discern what things do I already know the answer for, and I want somebody else to say yes. What things do I not know the answer for, but I could kind of get a lot closer if I actually sat down and thought about it instead of running to somebody else. And, what things do I have to just learn by trial and error? And error comes, and the big thing is that I learn from it. It's like you're gonna fall down, so don't be afraid of falling down. The big thing about falling down is whether you pick yourself up or not. If you stay there on the floor, yeah, that's one thing. But if you pick yourself up, then you learn something from it. Yeah. So I think sometimes it's like, just tell me the one right answer and the one right thing to do, and then I won't make any mistakes and I'll live happily ever after. Yeah, like the woman in Malaysia who asked me who to marry. And she said, I asked this previous, because different lamas would come to her center. I asked this Lama, and he said, good to marry this man. And then I asked the next one, and he said, no, I shouldn't marry him. So what do you think? Should I marry him or not? How am I supposed to know that? Yeah? And monastics have a precept about not being matchmakers. But how am I in the world am I supposed to know whether somebody that I've just met should marry somebody else who I've never met? And even if I knew the two of them, how am I supposed to know if they should get married or not? Yeah? So Lama Yeshe, he used to, I remember he used to shake his head and he used to say, use your own wisdom, dear. Yeah. Next thing I know, you're going to be asking me where to go pee-pee. You can figure that out yourself. Then we all ran off to the toilets. Yeah. Because you do figure it out yourself most of the time. Sometimes you have to ask. Okay, so another question came in. So somebody's saying, it seems that the term of either love or loving kindness is often used in practices of mind training and guru yoga. Is loving kindness and not love, which implied some attachment, always a better term for describing this Buddhist attitude of wishing happiness? Actually, what Buddhists translate as either love or loving kindness is the same word. The same word as metta or maitri, like our kitty. Okay? And it can be translated as love or as loving kindness. When Buddhists use the word love, we're not using it in the same way, hopefully, that it's used in a worldly way. Yeah, in a worldly way, love is there's genuine care for somebody, but there's a lot of attachment. How do you know there's attachment? Because there's dependency, there's expectations, there's not wanting to separate, there's wanting to be important to that person. Okay? So that is a love attachment blend. Yeah, which depending on the relationship, can go more towards love, but often it goes more towards attachment. Okay, when Buddhists use the word love, just the word love, which can also be translated as loving kindness, it's the simple wish for somebody to have happiness in its causes. Okay, so it doesn't imply that you even know the person, let alone have an intimate relationship with them. It's a much more open-hearted view that is developed on the basis of equanimity. In other words, on the basis of freeing ourselves from attachment to dear ones, antipathy for enemies, and apathy towards strangers. Okay? So it's a very different kind of attitude. When we talk about heartwarming love, that isn't the same as just love, okay? Heartwarming love is a specific stage in the 7-point instruction on cause and effect, where based on considering the kindness of sentient beings when they were our parents, and wanting to repay that kindness, then there's that feeling of affection towards them. Okay? That affectionate love is a cause for compassion. Okay? So they go in a special order. First heartwarming love, then compassion. Okay? Just plain love that isn't heartwarming love that doesn't have a sequence with compassion. Sometimes people develop love first, sometimes people develop compassion first. So while love is the wish for somebody to have happiness and its causes, compassion is the wish for them to be free of dukkha and its causes. Okay? So it's a very short definition, but when you go to cultivate these attitudes, first we have to spend some time thinking about what is happiness and what is suffering and what is the cause of happiness and what is the cause of suffering. Because again, due to societal conditioning, which doesn't think about past and future lives, which doesn't think about karma, which doesn't think about creating the cause for full awakening, worldly society has one definition of happiness and its causes, and Buddhism has another definition of happiness and its causes. And the same thing goes for dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, but like I explained yesterday and the day before, I think, suffering really isn't a good translation, because suffering makes us think that you're in actual manifest pain, whereas the three kinds of dukkha that we talked about yesterday, only one of them involves manifest pain. The other two don't. Yeah, and in fact, somebody can think they're happy. Yeah, especially with the second one. You get what you want. You have this giddiness with your attachment being fulfilled, and this is wonderful. And then somebody tells you you're suffering then. You say, forget it, I'm not suffering. This is happiness. I have my chocolate and I can eat it too, finally. Okay, but when you really examine on a deeper level, you find that it's not true happiness, because it's dependent on external things that are not stable. And because the longer you do it, the more the happiness goes down, and we want something else. Okay, so in thinking about what is happiness, okay, we start with having the four requisites, for life: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. Yeah, and then we might add friendship, and then we might add social status. Yeah, and we might add praise and approval, and we might add a good sense pleasure. And what do we have? The worldly concerns, 4 of them anyway. Okay, and we think that's happiness. And so we sit and, wish others happiness. May they have, a palace. May they have, as, the perfect relationship. Where may they have, delicious food. May they never get sick. May, they always have a success in whatever endeavor they take, And so it's fine to wish other people that. Yeah, it's fine. No problem with that. But in Buddhism, we want to also wish them another kind of happiness. Because remember, worldly happiness is grade F happiness. So let's, wish them grade AAA happiness. What is grade AAA happiness? Okay, it's the happiness of full awakening. Okay, what's grade AA happiness? The happiness of becoming an arhat, being liberated. What's just grade A happiness? The happiness that comes even though you're an ordinary being doing your Dharma practice and having tools to balance your mind out. Yeah. So there's lots of other kinds of happiness that don't depend so much on things outside. Yes, they depend on having a teacher. Yes, they depend on having a supportive community. Yes, they depend on teachings and books and so on. But the real thing that brings the happiness is not the external things. Those are tools that help us to learn, but our practice. Okay? So wouldn't it be nice, when your friends are upset, that you not only wish them freedom from dukkha, which could be any of the three kinds of dukkha, not just the ouch kind, and you wish them Dharma happiness. May this person be free from the constant need of self-affirmation. May they have self-confidence. May they open their heart in loving kindness to others. May they be able to connect with others without attachment and animosity. This is the kind of thing that I pray for our Prez. Okay? This is what he needs. So when we want others to have happiness, and practice that meditation, it's not that we always want them to have what they think they need or what they think will make them happy. Okay? Because in this situation, somebody thinks that what will make him happy is having very high ratings and stomping on all opponents and getting rid of anybody who has a different opinion. But we know that although he thinks that's happiness, we know that's not going to make him happy. No way is that going to bring real happiness. What would bring real happiness is if there were a complete change in the mind, of feeling secure so that you don't need ratings to make you feel good about yourself. Being able to connect with others out of a real heartfelt fondness so that you don't always create enemies. Being able to tolerate differences of opinions and knowing that can create a better solution than just following one's own instinct. And having confidence in that process of sharing and listening with others, that would bring more happiness. Okay? So we have to, when we're wishing people happiness, it's to really think, not what they think is going to bring them happiness. Because somebody who has a substance abuse problem, what's going to bring them happiness? Unlimited supply of drink and drugs. That's what they think they need. Unlimited money to go out and buy your substance of choice. Okay. Is that going to really make them happy? Forget it. Okay. So wishing people to have happiness and its causes isn't wishing them to have everything they want. Because sometimes, and we're included in this, we want things that are bad for us, that are harmful to us. Don't we? Look how difficult it is to abandon fast food and all the kind of, food that, chips. Chips, chocolate, cookies, what? Ice cream, marshmallows, baklava. There's so many things. And we know that eating them is bad for our health. And we know that the companies do intricate trials and tests to get the right amount of oil, salt, and sugar in the chips so that you always want to eat more and more and more and more and more. And, we know it's bad for us. With the sweets, we know that, yeah, like that. She's sitting like this. Yeah, that's how we are. We know with the sweets, there's a chance of type 2 diabetes. I don't want to hear it. Yeah. We know all these things. Is it easy to change our eating habits? No. As soon as those chips go out, everybody except me runs for them. I can't figure out why you guys like chips so much. I don't like them at all. Yeah. What? Yeah. You give me carrot cake without frosting. That I'll run for. Yeah. Or if you give it to me with frosting, I'll give the frosting to Venerable Tarpa. Yeah. But that's the one I run for. Okay. But, we all know that we don't eat in healthy ways. And yet we keep doing that. Yeah. And we may even sneak it onto the wish list sometimes, Because like for soak, offering soak doesn't mean you offer junk food. Yeah? Some people think soak is the festivity of junk food. Yeah. Do you want to offer the Buddhas all sorts of things that are not nutritious? Yeah. What about offering other things? And if we offer a lot of things that we can't eat, what about giving the extra soak to food banks instead of stashing it up ourselves so that every day there's chips on the table? Yeah, somebody's looking at me like, what are you saying? You're out of your mind. Give chips to the food bank? No way. Yeah. But, we can offer nourishing food for soak. Why not? I think that's a much better offering. Yeah. Anyway, what I'm getting at is how hard, I just had a little diversion, got up on my soapbox for a while I could. I'm getting off. But, because I'm trying to emphasize that, and I'm not just talking about other people, I'm talking about us too. Yeah. And so really think about what is happiness and what are the causes of happiness? Are the causes of happiness going to 31 flavors? Or is the cause of happiness creating virtue? Yeah. Is the cause of happiness winning the argument? Or is the cause of happiness creating virtue? Okay. So we have to pull ourselves out of our old way of thinking of what the cause of happiness is. Yeah, because, this is what we normally go to, is the worldly vision that thinks only of this life. If we wish people to create virtue and have minds that are happy creating virtue, they'll get the Dharma happiness, but they'll also get some worldly happiness. If we wish them only worldly happiness, then they're bereft of the Dharma happiness. Okay, so same thing when wishing others to have compassion. Really think what dukkha is. Yeah, think about it. Do you really want your spouse to get the promotion that will give them $1,000 raise, but mean that they're now working 12 or 16 hours a day? When you extend compassion to yourself, do you really want that kind of job? Where you're burnt out all the time? And where now you make more money, but you have less time to be with your kids, so you have to spend the money on the kids going to therapy because they don't feel loved by their parents, because the parents are too busy working overtime. Yeah? So really think about, what is suffering? What is happening? What are the causes? Yeah, for these things. And think of karma. Really reflect on the law of karma and its results. That will help you a lot, And then, when you meditate on love and compassion, you can really be spot on. Okay? And meditating on love and compassion are not the only thing we do. We should act with love and compassion. Okay, so the meditation is already hard enough. Okay, but acting can be really harder because acting involves moving our mouth or moving our body and really doing something. Okay, and I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to be lazy. And if I can wiggle my way out of doing something, I will do that. Yeah. And if I can delegate it to somebody else, I will do that. Yeah. So some people like to delegate. Some people want to do everything themselves and they don't want to delegate. So each has its own set of problems that comes along with it. Okay. But, not just staying on the cushion wishing everybody well, but doing something. And like I said yesterday, what we do, don't expect yourself to solve all the world's problems. Okay, I'm going to be the savior of the world. Listen, there's been a lot of prophets and saviors come, and nobody's been able to stop samsara. And if the Buddha, could, he would have stopped our samsara a long time ago. Yeah, but that's not possible because this is something like eating, drinking, sleeping, and going to the bathroom that we have to do for ourselves. We cannot hire somebody else to do it as much as we would like. Okay? So, really opening our heart up with wisdom. So it's not Mickey Mouse compassion. Yeah, it's not Mickey Mouse compassion. Oh, you're suffering so much. I'll give you some money, even though I know you're going to use it for drinking and drugging. No, I'm not going to do that because I care about you. I'll take you to rehab. I'll drive you to AA or NA. But I'm not going to give you money to sustain your habit because I really care about you. Okay? So sometimes to act out of genuine compassion, we have to risk other people getting mad at us. Mm-hmm. And I think that parents know this. Yeah, people who are parents know this. Because you love your child and you want your child to be happy. But does that mean that you give your child everything that they want? Every time your child whines, every time your child cries, every time your child throws a temper tantrum, do you give them what they want to satisfy them so that they're quiet? What happens if you do that? Yeah. What happens if a parent gives their child everything that the child is wanting?
They'll never know disappointment how to deal with it.
Yeah, they'll never know disappointment and how to deal with disappointment. They'll never know what it's like to be like the rest of the world where you can't always get what you want. and how to deal with that disappointment and not getting what you want. And that actually, the skill to deal with disappointment and not getting what you want is a much more valuable life skill than the ability to whine and bellyache until people give you what you want. Yeah? So I think, parents know that's what they have to teach their kids, for the kid to be a functioning adult. Otherwise, you're not going to raise an adult. You're going to raise a brat that isn't somebody who's not going to be able to function in society, because every time things don't go the way they want, they stamp their feet and cry or scream. Yeah. Is that kind of person going to have friends? Are they going to be able to form good relationships? Are they going to be able to hold down a job? Yeah. Giving your child every single thing they want is not being fair to the child. As an adult, as a parent, you have to model what it's like to handle disappointment. You have to talk about with your children how to think when somebody else gets the prize and they come in second place, or when they come in last. Okay? You have to teach your kids how to deal with these different kinds of events that life will throw at them, because and then model it in your own behavior. That's the hard part for parents. Because that's the biggest gift you can give to your children. Yeah, then they will grow up and be very kind, functioning adults who are good citizens. Yeah, who care about other people in society. Okay? So, but a parent, every time you say no to your child, you're risking, well, depending on how old they were when you started saying no, you're risking the child not liking you. Yeah. And saying, so-and-so, her parents give them this, and you're so mean, and you don't give it to me. And everybody else has designer sneakers. I want them too. And, you always say nice things about everybody else, but, you don't say it about me. And then, as a parent, you're risking your child saying that. And of course you want, parents want their kids to like them, so they cave in. Or they want their kids at least to be quiet, so they cave in. But, teaching them, saying to your child, I know you're disappointed. I know that you want this, and it's hard not to have what you want. Yeah, but this is an event that happens in life, and here, here's how we deal with it. We just accept it, and we, as we go on in life, we'll forget about this. Yeah. I mean, one way that I find very helpful when I don't get what I want is to think, in a year, will I even remember this? Yeah. When the food isn't what I want to eat, when somebody says something I don't want to hear, it's like, do I really want to remember this in a year? Will I even remember it in a year? Is it really that big of a deal? Okay, and I find that helps my mind a lot, because I know that the craving is the problem. And if I just, very often when you're strongly craving something, if you focus on some other object, then you're not feeding the craving, and the pain from the craving goes down. Okay? But Okay, so this person who asked this question was really, because I said yesterday that I'll talk more about what compassion is. So this is really, what compassion is. It's caring for the long-term welfare of somebody. Yeah. And sometimes when you do that, in the short term, the person may get mad at you. But, when you have a better idea of what they need and what is good for them, then you take that risk because you know that that benefiting others is not a popularity contest. Okay? Yeah, it's really, we think, benefiting others, that sounds nice. Then everybody will love me. They'll say how good I am, how kind I am. That's wonderful. And that's what I want because I want to be a people pleaser and I want a good reputation. But that's not necessarily practicing love and compassion from a Buddhist perspective. Okay? So, one other thing to put in here is that there is a bodhisattva vow, that if people have misunderstood what we're doing and are criticizing us, then that leads to having a bad reputation, then we want to correct that, not because we're attached to a good reputation, but because we want to have the opportunity to benefit others. And if there's a bad reputation, then our ability to benefit them is impinged upon because they don't respect us and they're not going to listen to us. Okay? So we need to fix up those kind of situations and not just have I don't care if they like me or not. Bleh. If you really want to benefit them, if there's been a misunderstanding or something, we try and fix it up. We're not always successful, but we should try. Okay, so that's more about love and compassion. Then, what prevents love and compassion? Well, there's a few things that prevent it. Attachment works, Anger, judgmental mind, and the star of the show, the self-centered attitude. Okay. So like I said, there's different levels of self-centeredness. Okay. The self-centered the common self-centered attitude, the worldly one, is the one that says my happiness now is the most important and I need to get what I want and stop my suffering and give me happiness. Okay. That's the principal kind of self-centeredness that worldly beings fall for. The more refined sense of self-centeredness occurs a little bit later, although it can also be there from the beginning, of my liberation from samsara is the focus, not so much others' liberation. Yeah. So my purpose is I need to get liberated from samsara. If I can benefit others, that's great, but their liberation really isn't, the purpose of my Dharma practice. Okay, so that's another kind of self-centeredness. The one that I'm going to talk about right now is primarily the lower level, but it also applies to the higher one, okay? Because in both of these levels of self-centeredness, who's the star of the show? Who's the most important one? It just coincidentally happens to be me. Yeah. And if you have the thought that you're more important than me, you've got it all wrong. Okay? So that is what the self-centered thought thinks. Of course, we are far too polite to say that. Okay? But if we look in the back of our mind and watch our behavior, okay, at least again speaking personally, that guy's always there. And I know how to dress it up so that it looks like I'm really caring about somebody. But actually, I'm attached to my own happiness. Or which is also, why I get lazy about being of benefit to others. It's a mind of, that's just too much energy for me. I've been working so hard. I work harder than anybody else. I need some relaxation time. Aside from the fact that I've been relaxing a lot, So I'm not saying that to be a good bodhisattva, you have to push yourself. And you're always, I got to be doing something. I got to serve other sentient beings or else I'm a failure. Because that also is self-centeredness. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to be a bad bodhisattva. And then people won't think good of me and my teacher won't think good of me and I'm attached to my reputation. I want to be a good bodhisattva. Yeah. So, no, that's not what being a good bodhisattva involves. Okay. But, watching out for that mind that's always saying, my happiness first. And my suffering hurts more than what others. And what I think is the right idea, always the right idea. Because I would never have the wrong idea. I mean, who would ever have the wrong idea? Yeah? I don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go believe the wrong idea. Everything I believe is the right way to do things and the right idea. The reason? Because I believe it and I would never believe the wrong one. Okay? So everybody should follow my ideas and everybody should do things the way I want them to be done. Because I know best. Right? You're looking at me like, huh? What are you talking about? But that's what's going on in our mind, isn't it? Yeah? And if there's a dispute and an argument, I am going to win it. So we have various strategies for winning the argument. One is we keep talking and we don't let the other person get a word in edgewise and we interrupt them. Oh, I can see this is ringing some bells. Of course, I don't do that. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't interrupt people. You all know me very well. I don't interrupt, do I? Okay, so we interrupt people and we repeat our position again and again. We criticize them. We criticize their idea and we criticize them as a human being. You are too stupid to know what the right thing is to do. And anyway, I'm going to win the fight. And even if I'm wrong, I'm going to win the fight. Have you ever found yourself arguing and you know that you're wrong and you don't give up and you keep arguing because you want to win the fight? You ever notice that? We see it in other people. They do it all the time because they're wrong, but they keep arguing. But we never do that. We keep arguing because we're right. But once in a while, we notice, oh, maybe that other person has they know what they're talking about. Yeah. But I don't want to admit it because I don't want to lose the fight. Because if I lose the fight, nobody will respect me. So I'm going to argue till the end. Yeah. What else do we do to win the fight? We this is happening now. We revise history. Yeah. Sometimes we even revise history as it's happening. Yeah. Oh, no, your information is incorrect. No, that's not what I said. Yeah. Here's what you said. Okay. We do that. Sometimes, yeah, we don't want to lose the fight, but we're exasperated because the other person is not giving in to us. So we throw up our hands and we stomp off. But no way am I going to lose that fight. I am not going to give in. One of my friends told me she was having some marital problems. And she and her spouse were going to therapy. And, together, couples therapy. And at one point, the therapist looked at her spouse and said, you can either win the argument or you can love her. And that, there's two choices. I can win the argument or I could love this person. If I keep fighting the argument, I'm going to destroy the relationship. Yeah. So, So this self-centered mind, it functions in so many different ways in our life. Yeah. We always want comfort. Yeah. We don't want any kind of discomfort. We want control. We want to control everything. And especially in situations where things are unstable and we can't control everything, then we try even harder to control it. And I think this is something that's going on during the pandemic with many people, because we can't control the pandemic. This virus has a mind of its own, so to speak. It's doing what it wants, and we can't control it. And, so we may be trying to control other things because we're confined to be at home. So now we want to control everything, at least at home, and everybody else's behavior, because that gives me a sense of not being so helpless. But that doesn't work very well for creating harmony. So what I'm also noticing, what people are doing, is they're learning to laugh. Yeah, this thing that you sent around, I just cracked up, And it's like people, I'm just really marveling at Americans' ingenuity of bringing humor into a situation that we can't control and learning to laugh about it. And how important laughter is to relax. I was reading one article. The title was, "The Toilet is the New Couch." It was written by a therapist. And the therapist was describing that now they're doing therapy online because they can't be with the client. And to get in a quiet place, very often the clients have to go in the bathroom and they sit on top of the toilet, And she's telling the story that, one of her clients was talking about a situation, how difficult it is, and was just sobbing and sobbing, and she leaned back and flushed the toilet. And in the middle of the sobs came the whoosh of the toilet. And the person started cracking up, and the therapist started cracking up too. Yeah? And it's just amazing what humor can do. And especially when people are using their creativity to, to bring forth humor. It's wonderful. And I usually don't get these little cute things to look at on the internet. And if I do get them, I often don't look at them. But now, in the pandemic, I appreciate getting them because they're funny and they help us say, I can't control everything, so I might as well just enjoy it. And laugh at what is laughable. Okay, so disadvantages of self-centeredness, and to really see how it harms us, and then see the benefits of cherishing others. We usually think that when we cherish others, they're the people who benefit the most. Okay? So if I'm cherishing somebody else, I'm kind of losing out, and they're getting the good stuff. Yeah. Unless, of course, it's a relationship with attachment, then I like benefiting the other person because they're really going to be nice to me back. But aside from that, we feel the person who is benefited is the one who's really getting the good stuff. His Holiness Dalai Lama has a completely different take on that. Because he says, when I benefit somebody, I'm doing it with a happy mind. This is the key. If we don't benefit, if we have an unhappy mind when we're benefiting somebody, first of all, we don't have the right motivation, but that's what produces the attitude of I'm losing and they're gaining. But if we really think deeply about the benefit of cherishing others, and we think deeply about their kindness, and we think about how we're all in this together, when we really want people to, and living beings to have happiness, when we benefit somebody, our mind is happy to give the benefit. Okay? So His Holiness says, when I act with compassion, I experience happiness. I feel good about myself. I love watching, the expression of the other person. I'm creating virtue, and, I like to rejoice at the creation of virtue. So when I benefit somebody, I'm getting a lot of benefit from it. Whereas I don't really know if the person I'm trying to benefit, how much they are going to benefit from it. Because sometimes people will take our help and sometimes they won't. So he said, the joy in benefiting or in helping comes from the mere act of doing it, not from the other person saying thank you. Not from other people around us saying, oh, you're so kind. But just the very joy itself of extending ourselves to somebody. Yeah? And, I thought about it. He's absolutely right, because sometimes we try to help people and they don't want it and they don't benefit. And if my happiness is going to depend on them saying thank you and them smiling and them saying, oh, I benefited so much from what you did, then I'm setting myself up to be disappointed. Whereas if I train the mind that just the mere act of doing something is what brings me joy, then you have a recipe for constant joy. Yeah. When we want that thank you, boy, we're, out there looking for that thank you. Just give me some appreciation. But then that takes the real joy away from it. Okay, so we just have a few minutes left in this particular session. What I want to do is I want to read a prayer by Vasubandhu. Okay, and it's 10 great vows that he wrote. Vasubandhu he lived 4th century, and he's a Sangha's brother, younger brother. He was a great pandita and wrote a lot. He's the author of Abhidharmakosha. He wrote a lot of Chitta Madhya texts and so on. Anyway, here's, I wanted to read the 10 great vows that he wrote, because I find it very inspiring. And so even if we don't have the capacity, to have even if we don't have the love and compassion of a bodhisattva right at this moment, at least to aspire to it, to have high regard for it, to appreciate and respect the people who do have it. Having that kind of attitude will really help us to generate those qualities. Okay, so therefore, he says, therefore, in the initial generation of the bodhisattva resolve to attain awakening for the benefit of all beings, it is the great compassion which is foremost. It is on account of the mind of compassion that one becomes able to generate 10 ever more superior great right vows. What are those 10? So here they are. 1, regarding those roots of goodness, in other words, the merit we've created. Regarding those roots of goodness I have planted in previous lives and in this present body, I pray that all these roots of goodness may be bestowed upon all the boundlessly many beings and dedicated to the unsurpassed bodhi, or awakening. May it be that these vows or resolves of mine shall grow in each succeeding thought moment, shall be produced again in each successive lifetime, shall always be bound to my mind, shall never be forgotten, and shall be guarded and retained by Dharanis, phrases that we recite to remember them. 2, having already dedicated these roots of goodness to awakening, I pray that on account of these roots of goodness, no matter where I may be reborn, I shall always be able to make offerings to all the Buddhas, and shall definitely never be reborn in a land where there is no Buddha. 3, having already succeeded in being reborn in the lands of the Buddhas, I pray that I shall always be able to draw personally close to them, shall follow along and serve them in every way, shall remain as close to them as a shadow to the body, and shall never become distantly separated from the Buddhas, even for the briefest of moments. 4. Having already succeeded in drawing personally close to the Buddhas, I pray that they will speak Dharma for my sake in accordance with whatsoever is appropriate for me. May I then straightway perfect the bodhisattva's 5 super knowledges. So those are abilities such as to read others' mind, hear sounds very far away, certain physical supernormal powers. Okay, then 5. Having already perfected the bodhisattva's 5 super knowledges, I pray that I shall thereupon be able to reach a penetrating understanding of worldly truth together with its widespread artificial designations, that I shall also then completely comprehend, in accordance with its genuine nature, the foremost ultimate truth, and that I will gain right Dharma wisdom. So praying to realize ultimate truth and conventional truths, conventional existence. Having already realized the right Dharma wisdom, I pray that free of thoughts of aversion, I shall then explain it for the sake of beings, instructing them in the teachings, benefiting them, delighting them, and causing them all to develop an understanding of it. 7. Having already become able to create an understanding of right Dharma in beings, I pray that availing myself to the spiritual power of the Buddhas, I shall be able to go to all worlds without exception, everywhere, throughout the 10 directions, making offerings to the Buddhas, listening to and accepting right Dharma, and extensively drawing in beings to the Dharma. 8. Having already received right Dharma in the abodes of the Buddhas, I pray that I shall thereupon be able to turn the wheel of the pure Dharma in accordance with it. May it then be that all beings of the 10 directions worlds who hear me proclaim the Dharma, or who merely hear my name, shall then straightway succeed in abandoning all afflictions and in generating bodhicitta. 9. Having already become able to cause all beings to generate bodhicitta, I pray that I may constantly follow along with them, protecting them, ridding them of whatever is unbeneficial, bestowing on them countless sorts of happiness, relinquishing my life and wealth for their sakes, drawing in beings and taking on the burden of right Dharma. And 10, having already become able to take on the burden of right Dharma, I pray that even though I shall then practice in accordance with right Dharma, my mind shall nonetheless have nothing whatsoever which it practices. May it be that in this I shall conform with the way that the bodhisattvas themselves practice right Dharma, and yet have nothing whatsoever which they either practice or do not practice. In other words, to see their entire practice as empty of inherent existence and yet dependently existing and appearing as like illusion. So those are Vasubandhu's 10 heartfelt, unshakable resolves. Beautiful, huh? So when we, are meditating on bodhicitta, then, to say this, to make these high aspirations from time to time, or a lot, is very, very beneficial. And it prevents depression. It makes the mind very happy. It really uplifts the mind to think that there are beings who actually are like this, and to think that we can become like this too.